The air in the WNBA had always carried a certain tension, a quiet hum of competition mixed with the shared burden of building something from the ground up. For 27 years, it was a sisterhood forged in empty arenas and missed paychecks, a collective struggle against indifference. But in the 2024 season, that hum became a roar, and the tension snapped into something far more dangerous. The league crossed a line, one drawn not in chalk on the hardwood, but in the ledgers of accountants and the silent resentments of veteran players. And there is no going back. The catalyst wore the number 22 for the Indiana Fever. Caitlyn Clark, a rookie from Iowa, didn't just enter the league. She detonated a cultural and economic bomb within it. Her arrival was a seismic event, measured in sold-out arenas, shattered merchandise records, and a societal attention that the WNBA had spent decades begging for. But the aftershocks are now threatening to tear the league apart from the inside. This is no longer a story about basketball. It is a raw, unfolding drama about power, value, legacy, and the terrifying question of what happens when one person's gravitational pull becomes stronger than the institution that houses her. The fracture became audible in a place where such things are supposed to stay hidden, a team meeting. Picture a room of seasoned athletes, women with years of sweat equity, chronic pain from sacrificed bodies, and memories of playing in near silence. A veteran, a player whose name is synonymous with the league's gritty growth, stood up. Her voice didn't shake. "Stop pretending," she said, the words cutting through the sterile air, "that she is not the reason we're all getting paid more." The room didn't erupt. It imploded into a silence so heavy it felt physical. Some players stared at their hands, nodding almost imperceptibly, the truth of the statement too stark to deny. Others looked away, out the window, anywhere but at the speaker, their faces masks of discomfort and betrayal. That moment of silence was more deafening than any argument. It was the sound of a foundational myth, the myth of perfectly equal collective growth, shattering. That tension born in that silent room did not dissipate. It began to circulate, a toxic vapor in every locker room, on every team flight, in every group chat. The catalyst for this confrontation wasn't just Clark's on-court magic, though her logo threes and audacious passing were the engine. It was the cold, hard data that followed her like a shadow. When her Panini trading card collection sold out in 3 hours at $85 a box, it wasn't just a sales milestone. It was a market signal, a flare shot into the sports economy that illuminated a new, uncomfortable reality. League executives rightly celebrated the record-breaking revenue, the soaring TV ratings, the unprecedented sponsorship interest. But in locker rooms, veterans started doing the math. The questions were whispered, then spoken aloud. Why can one rookie generate more direct revenue than entire franchises did 2 years ago? Who, truly, holds the power over the league's future? The answers are contained in a document that will never see the light of day. Circulating among WNBA ownership groups, this confidential report breaks down the 2024 revenue streams with forensic detail. And one number, attached to one name, appears with chilling frequency: 47%. That is the percentage of the league's new, incremental revenue, the growth that has owners and commissioners grinning, directly traceable to the presence of Caitlyn Clark. Nearly half of all new money, from one player in one season. Now stand in the shoes of a 10-year veteran. Imagine fighting through years where your away game hotel might be a budget motel, where you worked a second job in the off-season, where you gave interviews to a single local reporter if you were lucky. You sacrificed relationships, your physical prime, your anonymity to lay bricks for a league that the world largely ignored. You were a pioneer. Then a 22-year-old arrives. Suddenly the lights are brighter, the checks are bigger, and the world is watching. But it feels terrifyingly as if they are only watching her. The foundation you painstakingly built seems to vanish beneath the glitter of this new phenomenon. Your contribution feels invisible. This is the powder keg, a volatile mix of justified pride, economic anxiety, and deep-seated fear of erasure. Then Sophie Cunningham of the Phoenix Mercury lit the match. By going public and definitively stating that Caitlyn Clark is the face of the league, Cunningham did more than state an opinion. She chose a side in a Cold War that had been brewing since the moment Clark held up an Indiana Fever jersey. She shattered the unspoken rule of polite, collective celebration. In doing so, she exposed the rift between the old guard, who built the league with sheer force of will, and the new reality, a world where viral moments and individual branding rewrite decades of conventional wisdom. The conflict moved from whispered grievances to formal negotiations just 3 weeks ago. During collective bargaining agreement (CBA) talks, the Players Association presented the standard, noble demand for a 50-50 revenue share with owners. The owners' counter-proposal, however, contained a clause that dropped like a grenade in the negotiating room: market value compensation. This clause, framed in sterile legal language, proposed the ability to pay players based on their individual revenue generation, not solely on their on-court performance or tenure. Though her name was never written, Caitlyn Clark's shadow loomed over every word. The intent was transparent. The Players Association rejected it immediately, branding it divisive, destructive, and antithetical to the union's collectivist principles. But in private conversations, a dangerous doubt began to seed. If that 47% figure is real, and multiple independent sources confirm it is, then the current equal sacrifice, equal reward model is already a facade. The system isn't being threatened, it's already broken. Admitting it publicly, however, feels like a surrender of the soul. The evidence of this new reality is not subtle. Target sold out of Clark's trading cards faster than holiday PlayStations. ESPN began packaging WNBA broadcasts with the production value and primetime hype of the NBA playoffs. Corporate sponsors who had for years let league calls go to voicemail were suddenly in bidding wars for partnership deals. This wasn't the slow, organic growth of a sport finding its footing. This was a sonic boom. To dismiss it as a mere rising tide is an insult to the intelligence of every player, executive, and fan. Caitlyn Clark isn't a tide, she is a tsunami. And as one veteran player would later poignantly observe, tsunamis don't lift all boats, they flip them. The attendance numbers paint a stark picture of this new gravitational pull. In 2023, the Indiana Fever averaged a humble 4,000 fans per home game. In 2024, with Clark on the roster, that number exploded to 17,000, a transformation, not mere growth. More tellingly, Fever road games consistently drew higher attendance than the home team's own average. Fans in Los Angeles packed the arena not for the Sparks, but for the Fever. Fans in Chicago came out in force not for the Sky, but for Caitlyn Clark. The message is unmistakable. A significant portion of this newfound audience is not for women's basketball in general. It is for one specific performer. The players feel this shift in their bones. They feel the energy in an arena change the moment Clark steps on the court for warm-ups. They watch their own social media metrics, their personal brands, a crucial source of income, spike only when they are playing against her or posting content that includes her. The psychological toll is immense. As one veteran confided, her words laced with a chilling irony, "We spent years begging people to watch us play." She shows up and suddenly we're ungrateful if we don't appreciate the attention. But whose attention is it really? That question haunts the league. It is the existential dread they cannot voice. If Caitlyn Clark were to sit out a season to play exclusively overseas, or, unthinkably, to retire early, what becomes of this house of cards? What happens to the $200 million annual TV deal, the sold-out arenas, the newfound corporate cash? Everyone from the commissioner to the last player on the bench knows the answer. The silence around that knowledge is deafening. Sophie Cunningham's sin was breaking that silence. The backlash was swift and personal, a testament to how deeply she had struck a nerve. 3 fellow players unfollowed her on social media. Team group chats, normally buzzing with banter, would fall dead when she entered the conversation. It is alleged that one player, a respected veteran, confronted her directly. "You betrayed everything we built." The divide is no longer philosophical. It is personal, visceral, fracturing friendships that had survived decades of shared struggle. Cunningham had exposed the agreed-upon lie. The lie that this growth was collective, that all boats were rising equally, that Clark was just another star in a constellation. The market, however, is brutally honest. When Panini created its 100-card Caitlyn Clark collection, they didn't ask for permission from the WNBA or its Players Association. They saw a force of nature and monetized it. The instant sellout proved a terrifying new power dynamic. Caitlyn Clark does not need the WNBA's validation to be valuable. The WNBA, however, desperately needs her value to survive. This flip has sent shockwaves through every aspect of the league. Rookies now enter the league with endorsement expectations previously reserved for decade-long veterans, not because they are better, but because brands are desperate to find the next Caitlyn Clark. Agents are now demanding unprecedented Clark provisions in contracts, clauses that guarantee renegotiation if their client hits certain revenue metrics. Veterans see this as poisonous, a direct attack on team chemistry and the sanctity of the game. But their protests are drowned out by the sound of money talking, and right now, the money is screaming. Consider a statistic that lays bare the new hierarchy. Caitlyn Clark's jersey outsold the combined jerseys of the next 5 most popular players in the league. The Indiana Fever's merchandise revenue in Clark's rookie season surpassed their total from the previous 3 years combined. This money, however, does not flow into a communal pot. It flows to Clark, to the Fever, to the league, creating a visible, tangible hierarchy that the old collective model was designed to prevent. Private conversations among players are where the true depth of the crisis is revealed. In a secret WhatsApp group named Reality Check, comprising 23 players from across the league, the unfiltered truth pours out. After Cunningham's comments went viral, one player wrote, "She said what we're all thinking but are too scared to admit. CC owns this league now. We're just renting space in it." The responses were a microcosm of the league-wide split. Some hailed it as courage, others as capitulation. But a veteran's reply cut through the noise. "If stating facts is surrender, we already lost." The facts, indeed, are merciless. During negotiations for the league's new media rights deal, broadcasters explicitly demanded, and received, guarantees for a minimum number of Caitlyn Clark games in primetime slots. Without that guarantee, the value of the deal was estimated to drop by 40%. The league's entire broadcast future is now inextricably tied to one player's schedule. Furthermore, a development unprecedented in women's team sports. Insurance companies are drafting Clark clauses for vendors and broadcasters, allowing them to recoup losses if she is injured and attendance viewership plummets. She is being insured against like a natural disaster or a market crash. The tension is now manifesting in formal proposals. At a recent Players Association meeting, a veteran faction suggested capping individual endorsement deals to preserve competitive balance and league parity. The meeting erupted. Younger players accused the veterans of jealousy disguised as justice. The veterans pleaded for the survival of the league as they knew it. The session ended in acrimony, resolving nothing but deepening the generational canyon. In the Reality Check chat afterward, a second-year player fired the shot that defined the new war. "Y'all want to limit our earning potential because one of us figured out how to make this league matter. That's not protection. That's sabotage." The veterans responded with a raw, emotional barrage of history, stories of high school gyms, second jobs, and invisible struggle. One wrote, "We bled for crumbs and now you want to feast alone." The gap between those who built the temple and those who inherited it during its sudden consecration is now unbridgeable. And in the center of this maelstrom stands Caitlyn Clark herself. Sources close to her indicate she is acutely aware of the resentment, the division, the unbearable weight of being both savior and disruptor. In a move that speaks to her character, or perhaps her political savvy, she is reportedly considering an astonishing gesture, voluntarily capping her own off-court endorsement earnings to reduce the league's financial dissonance. Her inner circle is divided. Is it a noble sacrifice for the greater good, or a naive misunderstanding of the forces she has unleashed? All agree on one point: it wouldn't solve the core problem. The problem isn't Caitlyn Clark's bank account, it's her gravity. She creates fans, defines narratives, and moves markets. That kind of power is elemental. It can be acknowledged, leveraged, or feared. But it cannot be redistributed by a clause in a contract. The crisis reached a fever pitch with a confidential email, marked for legal review, that landed in every owner's inbox at midnight. Its subject line: competitive balance crisis. Immediate action required. The attached projection model forecasted the next 5 years. The conclusion was stark. If current trends hold, 3 franchises will become financially non-viable by 2027 unless they can host the Indiana Fever, and thus Caitlyn Clark, at least twice a season. One owner, a league founder, read this and called an emergency meeting with his team's stars. His message was brutal in its clarity. We need to find our own Caitlyn Clark, or we accept that we are now supporting characters in her league. This is the stark economic truth behind the glory. Most WNBA teams operate on razor-thin margins, sustained by owner passion, not profits. Clark didn't just improve margins. She created a completely different financial paradigm, but one accessible only to those in her orbit. The reigning back-to-back champion Las Vegas Aces, led by the mighty A'ja Wilson, face a haunting symbol of this new order. Their 2025 season ticket renewals are down 12%. The reason? The Indiana Fever only visit Las Vegas once. That single game is already sold out at playoff-level prices. Wilson, the MVP, watches as the draw of a rookie eclipses the appeal of a dynasty. Her frustration, say sources, is profound, not at Clark, but at a world where championships now compete with, and can lose to, cultural phenomenons. Sophie Cunningham's public stance, despite the personal cost, had an unexpected consequence. Within 48 hours of her comments, she received 3 major endorsement offers from brands that had previously ignored her. They wanted her voice, her authenticity, her trending relevance. She declined them all, but the lesson was not lost on the league. Aligning with the new reality, even verbally, has market value. A quiet, pragmatic alliance of 8 players, dubbed the new reality, has formed. They coordinate social media content with Clark, lean into the hype when playing Indiana, and have accepted that proximity to her star is a more valuable currency than traditional